Hey, what is up, everybody? Ross Cessna from Spiritual Phoenix Studios, just bringing you a little video explaining some of the magical practices I've gone through in the past week. Earlier, I had said that I would not be able to do those as prolific as I did last week, where I made like 3 of these videos. Probably 1 a week is what I'll be able to do. More if needed, obviously, but enough rambling from me. Let's get into what kind of magical practices I did this week. So first off, we have the house cleaning. So closed on the house on Friday. This Sunday, I kind of went in. One of my friends from high school had actually not high school, earlier back, middle school. Her and I happened to reconnect through a magic group, no less. And she had given me this Greek method of fumigation for house cleansing. And what I had done is mixed together bay leaves, rose petals, and a little bit of eucalyptus. Put that in a abalone shell. And I did this on Sunday at the hour of the sun, kind of walked around and burnt that blend of things in the abalone shell and just cleaned out the space. In addition to doing that, I had also called in my ancestors, right? So my family has somewhat of a history of gifts, so I called in that side. And then additionally, I've done some ancestor work. One of the people who I have a lot of respect for in this community, Gordon White, he talked about at one point asking your ancestors to help heal some of the ancestors that needed some more work. And I've been doing that for 2 years. I'd also really spent a lot of time working with Hermanubis. I actually have Hermanubis on my altar. And if you're not familiar with who that is, they're kind of this weird blend of a deity of Hermes and Anubis. So they're kind of the messenger to the dead. I've also done a lot of work with, I always get this wrong. I want to say it's St. Christopher, but I could be mistaken. Anyhow, the day after Halloween on the evening, I have done this ritual 2 or 3 times now, where I'm trying to connect to an intermediary to the spirit world. So I feel like I have a pretty good ability to draw people over, and I definitely do. There was a big shift in the energy and the location after doing all of this stuff. And the other thing that I did is some crystal grid work. So if you don't know, I have Spiritual Phoenix Studios also has a shop. We sell crystals and all of these things. And I took the time to make a mock-up of how I'm going to lay out a crystal grid, and not only in the physical property of the house, but one in the attic space as well, to kind of help maintain everything. So those are some of the practices that I did, and I really sincerely did feel a big shift in the house. And maybe it just is putting the intention out there, but the energy has changed. And that said too, right? Like the house didn't have bad energy before. It was just calibrating it to me. One of the things that I want to talk about, and I don't have this actually mentioned in here either, a lot of this work was inspired by the custodianship class from the Rune Soup website, because I was taking that class, right? I still actually have to finish it up. But anyhow, it's largely based on the premise of houses kind of having their own spirit or own presence. And I really feel that a lot of the work that I did honored the house very early on by giving it that much attention and consideration. And doing that before preparing to do some upkeep and updates and stuff like that. And really take care of the house, because the house has been, I don't want to say neglected, because that's not the right word, but there was a lot of stuff where people took the easy route, and doing things to enhance it's a great house. Like doing things to enhance that, I think, is going to help it. So that's what I wanted to say on that. And then the other thing that came up for me this week, and this was somewhat unintentional, is escaping egregores. And if you're not familiar with the term egregore, let me explain what that means first off. So an egregore is kind of, the way that I would put it is, it's like the energy of a collective group of people, right? So one example of an egregore would be the United States, right? It's an egregore in the sense that there's many different minds projecting what it means, but there's also a deeper level of this to where that energy of that collective thought actually has some sway or influence over the people that are involved with it. So one of the things that I did was go through and make a list of all of the different egregores that I'm personally involved with. Um, so for me, I was involved with 12-step work at some point, and this is actually one of the things that really got me thinking about this a year ago, was like understanding the concept of egregore, and then understanding how sometimes when we join these groups, we're not necessarily sure of the underlying intent or power of some of them. But I went through things like that, like 12-step work, some of the different mental health labels and things that I have, because all of these different things impact how we think and function and react to reality, even if we don't think about it, right? And I really identified which ones of these things were actually helpful and which ones weren't. And that was a really, really interesting process. And one of the things that I had to come to terms with was even the egregore of like my own story to some capacity was actually incredibly, incredibly limiting. Carlos Castaneda, I talk about him a lot, and I give him a lot of credit, even though he gets shit on by a lot of people in the metaphysical community. He talked about this thing of losing personal history, right? Like letting go of personal history. And I was very much not in favor of it, because I think that there's a lot of power in our story. But I also think that he's not saying like completely detach from who you are. It's don't base your identity upon that. And I've heard things like that come up in certain like new age circles. And I think that they did it in a way more douchey way. And it could just be my own fact of like not necessarily liking a lot of new age stuff, even though I probably should, right? Or I should give it more credence. But there was an extremely cathartic process in looking at all of the different belief structures that I've subscribed to, and then consciously kind of shedding that, in a sense of redetermining my individuality, right? One of the things that I'm trying to do right now, and this is ironic in a sense, is I'm writing my second book, and I'm trying to use it as kind of like an intermediary egregore to help us disconnect from some of the more unhelpful ones. And it's supposed to help us process everything, so we have more of a buffer or a bubble from these things trying to control us, right? It's largely about escaping our thought form of the world. So it was very therapeutic in a sense to shed all of that. Anyhow, at this point, I'm basically rambling. I do want to kind of update on some of the other things that I have coming up. I'm not necessarily working any more magic on the house for about another week or so, actually. So I may not have a full update next week. I'll see kind of how everything shakes out. And then from then on, like the rest of this month is pretty packed with magical workings and trying to cram a lot of energetic practice in a very short period of time. So it's going to be interesting to see how all of that shakes out. In addition, I've reworked some of my scheduling and how I'm building content for things. So I'm curious to see how all that plays out. And this is like me being neurotic, but also really working with energy. I've actually planned my entrepreneurial schedule based upon the energy of the specific days, right? So I'm using planetary days as a guidepost for how I'm structuring my day. And so far, it's actually been pretty interesting. Maybe if you have the ability to try it, maybe you can do that as well. Anyhow, all of that said, thank you so much for checking this out. I look forward to continuing to make these types of videos, and I hope that you find them enjoyable. Have a blessed day. Peace.